Well, there's nothing like a good Friday in Trump land. I will just tell you all that I did not expect, given all of the attempts at distraction that we have seen from Trump and his people over the last 2 weeks, all of the different things that have taken Epstein out of the news cycle, I did not expect that we were going to get the release of the Maxwell transcripts today. I have to tell you a couple of things, though, before we even start talking about what's in them. I have done my former trial litigator speed read through these transcripts. I haven't read everything, but I've read a lot of it. And one of the things that I just want you all to know is that no matter what is in these transcripts, we still don't have the files. And one of the things that I want everybody to think about really clearly here is that this interview was designed as a part of the cover-up. We know going in that Maxwell was there knowing that a potential pardon or other favorable terms were on the table. I did not expect there to be anything in these transcripts that would adversely implicate Donald Trump. And actually, it's far more propaganda-ish than that. We're going to get to that in a second. But one of the things that I want people to just be aware of here is like, they still haven't released the files. And that in and of itself is a sign of the fact that there is an ongoing cover-up. Maxwell is a complicit enabler of Jeffrey Epstein, and her only get out of jail free card, or in this instance, getting transferred to a minimum security prison where sex offenders are normally not allowed to be kept card, was by going into this interview with the intent of saying nothing negative about Donald Trump. Like, she knows which side her bread is buttered on. Okay, so let's just talk about what's actually in these transcripts from what we know so far. First and foremost, she starts out by praising Donald Trump. She says, it's just extraordinary. I'm paraphrasing here. It's just extraordinary what he's been able to accomplish. I'm very impressed. Okay, so that's the first official mention of anything having to do with Donald Trump, other than the fact that she met him in the 90s because her dad knew him. Okay, from there on, she has asked a whole series of questions about whether or not, as far as she knew, Trump had ever engaged in any massages, had ever done anything untoward. And she goes on to say that Trump was never anything but a gentleman in her presence. Now, I'm going to remind you all, we have footage of Trump and Jeffrey Epstein manhandling girls at Mar-a-Lago in the late 90s or early aughts. Like, there's actual footage of him grabbing women in front of Jeffrey Epstein, okay? So the idea that she is saying that Trump never did anything untoward, that he was a perfect gentleman, is laughable, absolutely laughable. But then we have another kind of feature of this interview. And again, I have to remind you all, like I was a trial lawyer for 15 years. Depositions were one of the things that I did like routinely. I flew all over the world to take them on behalf of my clients. And one of the things that I was known for was positioning questions that would get to the truth, right? You learn this in law school, you learn it much more on the job, but part of taking depositions is about the way you carefully craft questions so that you can get the answer that is truthful and is also the one that you're after in many instances, okay? So like in litigation, you don't ask the ultimate question, right? You don't ask questions like, did you ever hear that Donald Trump had engaged in sex with underage girls? That question is not anywhere in this transcript, okay? Because he doesn't want to know the answer to that. Todd Blanche, who is Trump's personal attorney and now the deputy in charge of the DOJ, does not want that answer, okay? So the questions that were posed for specific reasons. And in the second day of interviews, Trump's name came up, wait for it, twice. You want to know how many times the name Clinton came up in that transcript? 11 times. They knew what they were after, and she knew what they were after, and she gave it to them. It's really clear just from like my first skim through all of this that she knew what she was there to do. And then on top of it, just in case you want to be really disgusted, she talks about the prosecutions of Jeffrey Epstein as being like the Salem witch trials. She says that she never recruited any underage girls to be molested by him, that men will be men, and sometimes they would show up for a massage and something sexual, and she didn't know anything really about that. She is a sociopath, okay? And as we knew before this interview, and we now know here, a complicit enabler and a bald-faced liar. So there is nothing in this transcript. And again, I will remind you all, like I went through it pretty quickly, but there is nothing in these 2 days of transcripts that should come as any surprise to anybody. Now, she has given them all the ammunition that they need to claim that Trump's not in the files themselves, all right? And still, And still, I'm going to point out that if there was nothing for him to be afraid of in those files, we would already have them released to the public. Okay? They have no reason not to release those files unless he's in them. Right? Does everybody get this from like a logical standpoint? If this was a civil litigation, the next thing that I would be doing would be walking into court with a motion to compel the release of the documents. Okay? Because there's nothing in there. Like, she is an interested party. She is operating in a manner to get herself what she knows she can get from this president. And she made her deal. It's pretty clear. So I don't want anyone at this point to think that this is some kind of like end of the story or great revelation. And I also want to just set some really clear expectations here, okay? They are going to use her words to justify their own cover-up, okay? You should expect it to happen. This transcript was just released a half an hour ago. You should expect it to happen like instantaneously. It will be all over Fox News tonight. I'll just predict this, that she said that Trump had nothing to do with these actions, okay? They're going to ride this one into the sunset. And the response to it from every single Democrat, person on the left, anybody who was interviewed, anybody that you happen to talk to when you're speaking to them, should be, if he has nothing to hide, release the files. If he has nothing to hide, release the files. If he's not in them, release the files. That's the answer. That's the answer, okay? They have set this up as a supreme piece of propaganda and disinformation. And they got what they paid for, okay? Our job now, and the job of all the Democratic leadership, is to demand the release of the files. If he's not implicated, there's no photographs or videotapes of him in there. There's no witness statements or testimony that he molested anybody. They should release the files. They want to implicate former President Clinton, release the files. They want to implicate Larry Summers, who's mentioned in the first day of the transcript, release the files. They want to implicate sports figures who are mentioned in the first day of the transcript, release the files. That's the answer. If you have nothing to hide, release the files. Like, that's it. Full stop. Okay, we have other things we have to talk about today because it's been an absolutely batshit day. Like, I just want to mention this. And you all know I'm broadcasting late. I had an emergency with one of my kids. Thank you for your patience. But I had a list already today that began with the word batshit. Okay. So we have to talk about this press conference that happened this afternoon, because Trump gave a press conference this afternoon that was entirely off the rails, like beyond. And I know we've had a lot of moments like this over the last 10 years, but I'm going to tell you, like, this was crazy pants. It was about many things that were completely off topic, but particularly about rolling the U.S. military into U.S. cities to perpetrate violence against the population on the claim that there is a crime problem in these locations. Okay. He mentioned Chicago. He claimed that Black elderly ladies are screaming for him to invade Chicago. It was batshit crazy. He's nuts. Okay. Absolutely nuts. You can't watch even like a snippet of that press conference, a snippet of it on Blue Sky, and not know that he is completely off his rocker. There were moments in that press conference where, like, he made literally no logical sense. He was asked one question and he ended up all the way over here. And I know we're all used to that happening, but I'm telling you, he's gone, like gone. And again, I have to remind people, because I get asked this question on the Patreon feed all the time. Reminder, head on over there and subscribe. Kick us some subscription dollars, like $5 a month, to get all this good content and to ask questions and get bonus broadcasts. I was asked on the Patreon feed this morning, like, who's really running the government? Okay. I'm going to tell you who's running the government. Stephen Miller and Russ Vought and a couple of other lackeys that are left over from DOJ. That's who's running the federal government. He's not doing it. He's not capable of doing any of these things that he's positioning himself as doing. He claimed today that he was responsible in this press conference for ending 3 pre-wars. What the hell does that mean? What does it mean? Like, nobody even knows. All he's focused on is the Nobel Peace Prize because Obama got it and his racist brain can't get his head wrapped around it. So all of this, from the perspective of where we sit, is another indicator that, like, honestly, he should be gone. And I share Aaron Rupar's comment today when he was reporting on this, that, like, in any other country, If a president or a prime minister had said the kinds of insane things that he said today, we would be on our way to impeachment and removal overnight. Invading U.S. cities with the U.S. military to perpetrate violence against citizens, arming the National Guard on the streets of Washington, D.C. These people want to see U.S. citizens shot by our own military so badly they can taste it. It's crazy. It's also a total violation of his oath of office. Like, there's no question that this shit is like way beyond 25th Amendment land and way beyond the requirements for impeachment. Like, it's over. And yet, we have the Republicans in control of the House who will endorse everything that he does. And this is the reason why what's happening in Texas and what's happening in California and what's happening in New York State is so important, because they know they can't win. This is the other thing I just have to remind you all about what's happened over the last couple of days. We've been talking about California and Texas and redistricting this whole week, okay? And somebody still came onto the broadcast this morning and said, I don't know how I feel about this redistricting situation in California. Okay, so let's just back up for a second. Last night, Gavin Newsom signed bills that passed the California legislature allowing for mid-decade redistricting. There is still going to be a ballot initiative in front of all the people in California this November, okay? It's not like the people of California aren't going to have a say. But I'm going to tell you something right now. If you are opposed to this on principle, you really don't have a comprehension of where we are. Like, I got to say it. Like, the time for going high is over, because they have now arranged circumstances that will allow them to steal the 2026 election so that Trump and his lackeys will never be held accountable while they're in office. And so they have a full 4-year runway to destroy American democracy. If California doesn't do what it's setting out to do, if New York State doesn't do what it's setting out to do, if other blue states that can redistrict mid-decade, not all of them can, don't do it, we're fucked. Like, seriously, I know I don't talk that way on this broadcast very often, but it's the truth. Like, they have to do it. If you are in favor of preserving democracy, you have to be in favor of California and New York and other blue states fighting fire with fire. Like, the time for standing on principle with regard to this stuff is over. Like, it's over. You want to have a conversation about gerrymandering when the Democrats are back in power and we can eliminate all gerrymandering altogether and divide everybody up into nice, neat little squares? Fine. But we're never going to be in power again unless California and New York and other blue states do what they're doing right now. Full stop. Okay. Like, full stop. Okay. And he knows it. And everybody who's looking at this knows it. They also know that if we win in 2026, like, impeachment is going to be at the top of the agenda. Investigating ICE is going to be at the top of the agenda. There's going to be a reckoning for all of these people who are engaged in these deplorable violations of humanity, these crimes against humanity inside all of these detention centers. The DOJ guys who have gotten people from the U.S. Institute for Peace deported to Iran, where their families have been prosecuted, deserve to be brought in front of Congress to answer for their actions. The only way that happens is if we take back the House. And they are engineering the voting right now for 2026 through what they're doing in Texas, through Trump demanding that they find him 100 new Republican seats. They are engineering the theft of the 2026 election right now. And you know how that gets stopped? The only way it gets stopped is by California redistricting and New York doing it and any other blue state that can. We are past the point of standing on our points of privilege. Okay, we're way past it. We can have a conversation about the ethics of gerrymandering when this is over. Until then, if they want to roll out that carpet, they better expect that we're going to roll it out too. And also that we will beat them. Because 9 more seats, there are 9 Republican seats in California, 9 more seats in the House of Representatives in 2026, plus whatever New York can manage, is going to get us the end of Trump's agenda. Okay, you want to weigh out? You want to weigh out as soon as a year and 2 months from now? That's it. Okay, like, so we have to get it done. Like, we have to get it done. There's no other option. Okay, and the reason, by the way, the reason why this links up to the batshit presser is that he knows he's in trouble. The latest polls from this week have shown that his numbers are plummeting. They're in the toilet. He's approaching the 30s now in terms of approval ratings. Nobody wants what he's doing. More than 80% of the country, regardless of their political party, wants the Epstein files released. More than 65% of the country, regardless of political party, disapproves of his immigration policies. Like, he's over. It's toast unless they steal the election. And we have an obligation, and our leaders have an obligation to not allow that to happen. Period. by any means necessary. Not any means. I'm not in favor of violence. You all know that. But like, seriously, they have the ethical and the political and the legal ability to do this. Why wouldn't they? Okay. It's so important. Okay. We also have to talk about what happened to John Bolton this morning, because there was a lot of panic about this on the Patreon feed while it was going down. So John Bolton's home was raided by the FBI this morning. I have to remind you all that John Bolton and Kash Patel have kind of like an arch enemy's position in relation to each other, and have now for the last couple of years. Okay. John Bolton has been all over, frankly, the news shows talking about how unqualified Kash Patel was, right? Has talked about Kash Patel's like mission to get January 6th defendants pardoned and released, has bashed his ability to run the FBI. And now that Kash Patel is the head of the FBI, lo and behold, John Bolton's home has been raided, okay? We don't know all the details behind this, but I'm gonna say one other thing here. What this indicates is the start of a political enemy's revenge tour. And it has already been perpetrated, let's just not forget this, against a ton of Black men and women in power. Ross Baraka, LaMonica McIver, the woman who is currently on the board of governors for the Fed. We talked about her yesterday, not Lisa Collier, my bad. I've forgotten her name. Today's been a long day. I had my kid at the ER. The woman who's currently on the board of governors for the Fed, who this morning Trump said he was going to fire if she didn't resign because of rando allegations that have been invented against her by his own head of the FHFA, the Fair Housing Administration, claiming that she has committed mortgage fraud. When she hasn't been convicted of any crime, she hasn't even been indicted. Okay, like he is going after, and then there's Letitia James, right? He's going after what he perceives to be Black men and women who are not in his favor, who are in positions of power to hold him accountable. And now we have moved on to the white guys, to John Bolton. So one thing that I just have to remind everybody of here is that persecuting your political enemies, weaponizing the arm of the state, the DOJ, the FBI, federal law enforcement against your political enemies is per se authoritarian dictatorship action. Okay. We knew this was coming. I don't know the justification that they have for raiding John Bolton's home. Presumably they got a signed warrant from some friendly judge because they wouldn't have been able to do it otherwise. But I think everyone at this point should kind of see this for what it is, right? And we'll see. He's now threatening Adam Schiff, right? Of course, led one of the impeachment prosecutions with the same kind of mortgage fraud allegations that are incredibly nebulous. Like all of this is exactly what it looks like, okay? And I don't think, honestly, anybody should spend any time with like, did John Bolton commit a crime? Okay, we know what this is. We know what it looks like, okay? We know exactly what it looks like. Just in the same way that nobody should be debating the crime statistics in DC versus Mississippi or DC versus South Carolina. It's not about the crime. It's about like seizing power, right? And exercising power in ways that frighten and scare people and shut them up. Like that's what they're about right now. They just want power. That's it. And there's no rational justification for it beyond their own fascism. Like, see it for what it is. See it for what it is. Okay. All right. We did have a very good court ruling yesterday with regard to the Everglades concentration camp that I just want everybody to be aware of. So many folks know that there have been 2 cases pending against the Everglades concentration camp since it began. One of them has been with regard to whether or not the detention of people there was lawful. And the second has been on environmental grounds because the Everglades are a national park, okay? And there were very serious concerns raised. This is the other thing. I don't care how they get him. Like somebody on Blue Sky last night said something like, oh, it took an environmental case to shut it down. Who cares? They got Al Capone for tax evasion. Like, let's just take the win any way we can. Okay, so the environmental case proceeded, and the outcome of the environmental case was that because the environmental impact of the camp is potentially deadly to the Everglades, right? Because we're talking like sewage, right? Harm to the environment, the potential damage through the build out to the landscape and the creatures who live there. Because of the environmental impact, they have 60 days to shut it down. I think it's 60. Don't quote me on that. I'm pretty sure it's 60 days. They have 60 days to shut it down, and they cannot put any new detainees in that camp. Now, I will guarantee you it's going to be appealed. Okay. But I'm going to tell you, I am perfectly happy to have them shut down that camp, which I will never use by the name that they've given it because it's propaganda, for any reason whatsoever that meets the standard of a federal court. Okay. So it's done unless and until it gets overturned by a superior court. Okay. And I just have to say one other thing about that. we had another really bad ruling yesterday out of the Supreme Court, and that allowed for the termination of certain grants. And Katanji Brown Jackson wrote, as usual, a really scathing dissent in which she described the position of the majority of the Supreme Court as Calvin Ball, meaning that there are no rules, that all the rules that we thought have applied to the law, to precedent, to the executive branch are gone. And the only rules that there are right now, as far as the majority of the Supreme Court is concerned, is that the administration is always right. It was a scathing dissent. And she's so very good at it. My reaction to it when I read it was, I really hope at some point she's able to write for the majority, because her opinions will change history if she is ever in that position. But in order for her to be in that position, there's going to have to be Supreme Court expansion. So, yeah. At the bare minimum, we have a good ruling right now on the camp in the Everglades, and we'll see what comes next of that. Okay, one final thing I have to mention today, which is of significance. Yesterday, the DFL, which is the Democratic Party for the state of Minneapolis, not Minneapolis, the city of Minneapolis. I'm fried, you guys. I spent 4 hours in an emergency room today with my kids, so my brain is like not all the way back. Omar Fata, as we've talked about many times here, is an incredible candidate who is currently, or was until yesterday, the Democratic nominee for the mayor of Minneapolis. The DFL, which is the Democratic Party operation in Minneapolis, and in the state actually, was subject to a pressure campaign from people outside the state to withdraw its endorsement of Fata on the grounds that they had botched somehow the convention and that therefore they shouldn't be endorsing him. Now, let me just say this. It's going to backfire. Like, I have literally no doubt about this. The fact that they have withdrawn their endorsement is only going to piss people off, because Omar Fata, much like Zohran Mamdani, is like a once-in-a-generational political talent. He's an incredible advocate. He's, again, much like Mamdani, an immigrant, someone who came to this country to make a better life. He advocates for his people like nobody's business. He is well-loved in his current role as a state elected. And there was kind of no question that where he was headed, because he had beaten for the Democratic primary the current mayor of Minneapolis, that we had real Democratic socialist change on the way there too. Okay. You have to ask yourself a question right now, and I think it's a really important one. I mean, and I'm going to be pejorative about it because it's a Friday afternoon and I'm punchy. What the fuck is the Democratic Party doing? Okay. We have these incredible leaders, these people who are really stepping up to try to better people's lives. And the Democratic Party, rather than taking a lesson from the extraordinary campaigns that they're running, is instead taking its time to pull them apart, sabotage their campaigns, refuse to endorse them, and act like fundamentally like they're in on it with what's happening in this country. And we can have a lot of conversations about like dark money and donors and the way in which like centrist Democrats benefit from all of that. But I have to say that, Omar Fata is so well loved that I cannot imagine that this withdrawal of the endorsement is in fact going to be something that inures in the long run to his benefit. Like, I don't think he's going to lose no matter what they do. And in fact, like, all of this, honestly, may really backfire for the Democratic Party leadership. Okay, so this raises just like my final significant comment for today, which is this, okay? The future is upon us. Like, I need people to really grasp this, okay? We are at a moment where like democracy is burning and much of democracy is already in ashes. And the question is like, how do we get out of this, right? What's the outcome? I think about this, like, seriously, folks, like 24 times a day. What's the exit from this? Okay, like, how do we get past this? Because I'm going to tell you something, like, every fascist regime falls. Like, none of them last. Okay, they may last for like 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and then they're done. Okay, the real question we have to be asking ourselves now is like, what's the exit strategy? Okay. And I'm just going to give you one example. You all know how I feel about this. Like, part of the exit strategy is community organizing. You have to be organizing on the ground where you live. This is like My whole platform, you all know this, right? Like we train people to do this, like on a regular basis. This is part of our like whole agenda at the Gaia Leadership Project, is like training people to organize locally, because local is where it's at. You have to like train people to build dual power, to help their neighbors survive, to get the resources that they need, to fight back locally. Like this is how like whole movements get built, okay? But the other way out is to elect candidates who actually have a platform about making people's lives better, right? We talked about this earlier this week with regard to Mamdani, and actually we talked about it with regard to Omar Fata too. Like their platforms are about real issues that matter to real people, okay? They're not out there saying, you should vote for me because Trump sucks. They're out there saying like, how do you feel about free public transportation? How do you feel about making sure that ICE can't walk into your workplace and steal and kidnap your friends and send them to a foreign gulag, right? How do you feel about a platform that says everybody who's hungry should have food to eat? How do you feel about a platform that says like public schooling should be like valuable, right? Everybody's kids should have the right to an education. How do you feel about that? These are really basic kitchen table issues. And I know everybody's so afraid of like the Democratic Socialist name, but you know what? Like you got to get past that, because what it's really about is like, how do our elected officials take care of the people? Like that's what they're supposed to be doing. That's what Democrats are supposed to be doing. And instead what they're doing is like, oh God, that mayoral candidate's really scary. Better go for like the old white sex pest instead. Like, we really have to get clear on this. The way out of this, one of the major ways out of this, is to platform and enable and elect candidates that actually are in it to make people's lives better. To make people's lives better, to make people know that they have access to social services, that nobody's going to go hungry, that nobody's going to go unhoused, that people are going to have medical care, right? These are basic issues, and their platforms are working, and they're actually, you know, like all the Democratic consultants, oh, we got to worry about all these white guys and all these Trump voters, and we should be trying to get them in. You know who's actually converting Trump voters? People who are out there saying, we actually want to help working people be healthy and be housed and be fed. You know who's doing that? Zohran Mamdani, Omar Fata, other like progressive left-leaning candidates. Like that's the answer. So like, this is my plea, okay? You have to know who's running for office where you live. Like you have to know who's running for local offices, who's running for your school board, who's running for your library board, who's running for your environmental control board, who's running for your city council, okay? And at every instance, you should be platforming and supporting progressive candidates who are in it to make people's lives better. This is not a hard equation. And let me just say one other thing here. If you feel the pull in this era, like we have a client right now that we're working with of like 50 over the last 10 years who is currently running for local office. I just talked to her yesterday, okay? If you feel the pull to be a part of the force for good, please, I beg you, run for office, okay? There are plenty of great organizations that will train you to do it. We support a lot of people who have run for office, including people who have won, people who are mayors of their towns, who are sitting on city councils, right? There's plenty of good organizations that can support you. Emerge does it. She Should Run does it. Run for Something does it. If you think you could be a part of the solution, you should run for office. Like if it calls to you in any way, like this is your invitation. All right. Because we need people, especially, you know, like anybody can run. Our current client who's running is like in her 70s, and like you should run for office if you're in your 70s and you're called to it. Okay. But also if you're in your 30s or you're in your 20s and you feel like you could make a difference, you should run for office. You should run for office. So, you know, this is my plea. Okay. Like, don't get wrapped up in the nonsense about how like democratic socialists can't get elected in this country, or that like we have to be centrist, or we have to throw trans people under the bus in order to save democracy. It is bullshit. Like it's complete bullshit. The only way we win is by not throwing anybody under the bus, by making sure that everybody is cared for. Because you know what? We all rise and fall together. Like the whole of America is connected, including the people who you can't stand who have like Trump flags in their front yard. We all rise and fall together, okay? And they may suck and you don't have to be friends with them. You don't have to talk to them. You don't have to interact with them. But the reality is that like anybody with a brain knows that if you throw one person under the bus, your own freedom is in jeopardy. So this is the moment, okay, where we have to get behind the people who know that and who are out there trying to fight tooth and nail to make the country better. By the way, it's not Gavin Newsom. I'm just going to say that. He will not be the candidate in 2028. Stop sticking that man on a pedestal. He hates trans people. He was on a far right-wing podcast this week. The fact that he has moments where he talks some good shit does not make him qualified for national office. I said it. I stand by it. All right. Get behind the people who are actually truthfully standing on the side of everyone. All right. And like, it's time to do it now. Like, no hesitation. Ignore James Carville. He should not ever be platformed on another news station ever again. His moment has come and gone. It came and went like 30 years ago. All right. It is time to get behind the candidates who are actually willing to fight for everyone, like today. All right. That's it. That's my rant for this afternoon. I'm going to go pick up my other kid. Thank you all for being patient with me with the time today. Thanks for like dealing with my messy hair because, you know, it was a crazy day. I hope you all have a great weekend. Please, as always, my plea to you is like, do something this week to make your community better, whatever it may be, right? Maybe it's just like, you know, working in a community garden. Maybe it's making a donation to your local food bank. Do one thing this weekend that's going to make your community better, okay? Because every little thing matters. We have a video coming, by the way, on Monday on this exact topic. So you can see that then. All right. I will see you all back here next week. Have a great weekend, everyone. And I'm sure that we're going to be talking about the Maxwell files all weekend. We'll have a lot more to talk about in this front, like next week. By the way, crazy last thought, you know, way to like screw yourself on the news cycle. I mean, I still am having this moment of like, oh yeah, releasing them on a Friday afternoon when like people really kind of have been talking less about Epstein all week. Probably not that smart, but nobody ever said they were smart, right? Like it's kakistocracy for the win, among other things. All right, everybody, bye. Love you all. I'll see you next week.